Okay, doing the literature review now. This is the tough one to get it done in 12 minutes. We'll see if I can get it done. So I supplied some structure to the paper, put in where the introduction and title should go. One thing I notice about students is that they don't, left to their own devices to write papers, they don't put in enough section headings. And it really helps the reader along. So keep that in mind with the next papers you're writing, to add more section headings. And you don't need every 2 paragraphs, but at reasonable points, break things up and tell the reader where they're at. In any event, you have the John Hurwitz and Mike Peffley, I guess. We just use the last names here. And I put things in the form that they should. You got all that right. You italicized the journal name. You have the commas and stuff. The only thing is that if you look at the first opening parentheses around 2005, that's italicized. So attention to details, little things like that, people notice. And you want to get as much of it right as you can, so that if you get something wrong, it's not going to be held against you if it's just like one thing in a whole paper. Everyone can make a mistake or two. It's when every page is riddled with them. You get people doubting your, if you're sloppy with the little things, they think, what about the big things? Did you really do the research? Did you do it right? You say the cause and effect of. We have a hard time in the social sciences identifying cause and effect, so I say the reasons for varying perceptions. Utilizing, you say experiments such as, I would say that makes it sound like they're running the experiment. They're not running the experiment, they're taking the results of the experiment. They're utilizing research. And where you have I'm going to put that one in super, where you make reference to a piece of research or an article or a book or something that's outside, you have to give the full citation for it. So I inserted 2 footnotes there. You can put the citations in for the final project. And then I changed language around a little bit, and also you need a cite there. So how I change it around is I'm saying, the author suggests the different perceptions of and reactions to the police are evidence of a racial divide today that can be observed running through the various parts of the criminal justice system. I'd actually take today out. I think it's better without it. The authors also state, and then your quote is in there, and that's fine. One thing about that quote is just no, that was another art paper I was reading. Okay, so that's fine. So you talk about the basic perception of the police by both races. Do you mean whites and blacks? Because we're definitely more than 2 races. I can tell from the context what you mean, and readers can tell from the context, but you don't want to leave it up to that. You have an opportunity to be here to be precise, so be precise. So anyway, things roll along. They're pretty good. I think the writing is good at this point. When you use when you make a citation and you're using a page range, the proper way to do that is not PG, but it's it's 2 P's, PP period, and then we use an N dash between the numbers when you're showing a range of pages. If you're not familiar with an N dash, it's in Garner. You should look it up. And if you just look on, you make it by you put the numbers in with a space between them. You put in 2 dashes with a space on each side of it, and then you make a space after the last number in the second. In this case, you'd go 765 space dash dash space 766, and as soon as you space off that last 6, the program will fill in the N dash for you. African Americans largely distrust whites, and you say whites do, semicolon, with considerable data to support this distrust, there's little blame. It doesn't, you're missing at least a word or 2 in there, and I can't figure out what it is, so you got to fix that up. You use 13 and the percent sign. It looks much better if you write these things out if you're dealing with a whole number percent. And you always want to give your writing the chance to look as good as possible on the page. So I expanded those out for you. You should do it that way in future too. You also make reference to 46%, 40%. You're using all these numbers, and you've got a range of dates there, but you have to put a citation in for where that's coming from. I have it as a footnote because it's Bureau of Justice is what you're citing to. So you need the actual full citation there in a footnote. Associated with crime. Associated is a vague word in this case. You probably want to use something else or a more expanded description. The analysis that H&P provide, I'm just getting away from starting everything with H&P, which is a problem we often get into. You've got the first, second paragraph both start with H&P. Now the fourth one does. You've got to mix it up a little bit. They go on to explain, the authors explain that minor difference. You can sometimes I just play around with things and see how they react to being changed a little bit. Put in a subject. Put in a section for Article 2. You talk about the Trayvon Manning case. I just say Trayvon Manning's killing, and you talk about how this has to do with whether or not the criminal justice system worked. Trayvon Manning was shot by a private citizen, not by the police. The question about how the justice system worked in that case was that George Zimmerman was acquitted of murder. I think it was second-degree murder. But in any event, you need to draw that out because the reader otherwise who might not be as familiar, remember, or their memory might be beclouded, will not make the right inference there. I then bring in, I make a little change after you bring in the bibliographic information on Bobo and Thompson, analyze the effect of a criminal justice system that is arguably rigged against African Americans. How about, and also consider public opinions that surround it. So I make some changes to these edits even as I go through them. So again, the point with this class, you've got to compare things head to head. I'm sending you the corrected copies here, and I'm obviously probably going to have to start another video to finish up this section. Bobo and Thompson from now on B&T. Assert law enforcement treats African Americans unfairly due to years of, would the word calculated fit in there? Policy changes under the war on drugs, fear of crime, impressed on Americans. The question that is begging to be asked there is by whom, and I insert the article "the" in front of removal of voting rights from felons who are disproportionately African American. Use of police changes for social control. The use of policy changes for social control has long you have had, but it's policy changes, have had, and I'm saying the use of policy changes for social control has long had. They're okay. They're both okay. Though now more indirectly than in the past. Those changes, as opposed to these changes, those changes we already talked about, these ones we're about to talk about, these are changes you've made reference to, so it's those changes. The authors consider, then the last sentence, the authors consider the way that African American community has been prevented from fighting back politically. So I made a minor change there. Gonna hopefully be able to get to the end of the page here before I run out of time. Right into the paragraph, which is the start of the next page. The Race Crime Public Opinion Study needs a citation and a footnote. Supports just trying to figure out where I am. Okay. Alright, so I've moved some paragraphs around here. I've brought the paragraph up now that talks about race, crime, and public opinion. It supports those claims. A disproportionate number of African Americans believed that they experienced bias in comparison to white respondents. Needs a citation there. Changing the percents around so that they're written out. Everything else is okay there. So because of the timing on this, I think it's going to make more sense for me to start a new video and finish it up here, finish it up that way.